In the vast wilderness of Kenya's Maasai Mara, Dr. Sarah Mitchell witnessed something that would challenge everything science understands about lion behavior and memory. When a massive bull elephant charged toward an injured lioness, this veteran wildlife veterinarian made a split-second decision that saved the cat's life. But what 7 lions did 3 months later defied every principle of animal psychology and rewrote our understanding of gratitude, loyalty, and the extraordinary bonds that can form between humans and the most dangerous predators on Earth. Before we dive into this incredible journey that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about wildlife, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the notification bell so you never miss our most amazing animal stories. Dr. Sarah Mitchell had spent the last 12 years working as a mobile veterinarian across the remote regions of the Maasai Mara, treating everything from injured zebras to infected elephant wounds. At 41, her sun-weathered hands and steady nerves had seen countless emergencies in some of Africa's most challenging terrain. Sarah operated out of a modified Land Rover, equipped with surgical tools, anesthetics, and medical supplies, responding to calls from rangers and local conservationists whenever wildlife needed urgent medical intervention. The morning of March 15th started like any other. Sarah had received a radio call about a lioness with what appeared to be a severe leg injury near the Mara River crossing. These calls weren't unusual, but they always carried inherent danger. Treating apex predators in their natural habitat required precise timing, expert knowledge of animal behavior, and nerves of steel. Sarah had developed a reputation among the local rangers for her ability to remain calm under pressure. Whether she was removing a snare from a leopard's neck or treating a buffalo's infected wound. As Sarah drove across the golden grassland toward the reported location, she reflected on the delicate balance of her work. Every intervention carried risks, not just to herself, but to the complex ecosystem she was trying to protect. Wild animals weren't pets, and even her efforts to help could sometimes disrupt natural processes. But when human activity caused injuries through poaching snares, vehicle strikes, or habitat encroachment, Sarah believed intervention was not only justified, but necessary. Her medical kit contained enough tranquilizer to safely sedate a full-grown lion, and her years of experience had taught her to read the subtle signs of animal stress and aggression that could mean the difference between a successful treatment and a deadly encounter. Sarah's radio crackled to life as she navigated the rocky terrain near the Mara River. "Dr. Mitchell, this is Ranger Kamani at the North Station. We've located the injured lioness, but there's a complication." The urgency in his voice made Sarah press harder on the accelerator. "She's part of the Acacia Pride, 7 lions total. The matriarch appears to have a deep gash on her rear leg, possibly from a territorial fight. But the entire pride is agitated, and there's a large bull elephant in the immediate area." Sarah had worked with the Acacia Pride before. This particular group consisted of 2 adult females, 1 aging male, and 4 younger lions who had formed an unusually tight-knit family unit. Unlike typical lion social structures, where males often compete aggressively, this pride displayed remarkable cooperation and loyalty to one another. The matriarch, a powerful female with distinctive scarring around her left eye, was the undisputed leader of the group. When Sarah arrived at the coordinates, she immediately understood the complexity of the situation. The injured lioness lay beneath a fallen acacia tree, her breathing labored, and her left rear leg twisted at an unnatural angle. Fresh blood stained the dry earth around her, and flies had already begun to gather. The other 6 lions formed a protective semicircle around their fallen leader, their muscles tense and ears flattened against their heads. Every few minutes, one of them would emit a low growl, scanning the horizon for threats. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The bull elephant stood approximately 200 meters away, massive and clearly agitated. His ears flapped continuously and trumpeted periodically while pawing the ground with his enormous feet. Bull elephants during must, their annual period of heightened testosterone and aggression, were notoriously unpredictable and dangerous. This particular male appeared to be in the early stages of must, evidenced by the dark secretions visible around his temporal glands and his restless pace.
Sarah parked her vehicle at a safe distance and assessed the situation through binoculars.
The lioness needed immediate medical attention. The wound on her leg was deep enough to require stitches, and potential internal injuries from whatever had caused the trauma demanded urgent evaluation. However, approaching the pride with an agitated elephant nearby would be extremely dangerous. Standard protocol dictated waiting for the elephant to move away naturally, but the lioness's condition suggested she didn't have hours to spare. Sarah faced an impossible choice between following safety procedures and potentially losing a patient to delayed treatment. Sarah's hands gripped the steering wheel as she watched the lioness's condition deteriorate through her binoculars. Blood loss was becoming critical, and the animal's breathing had grown increasingly shallow over the past 20 minutes. The pride's protective formation hadn't wavered, but their anxiety was palpable. The younger lions paced restlessly, while the older male occasionally nudged the injured matriarch with his massive head, as if trying to encourage her to stand. The bull elephant's behavior had escalated dramatically. What had initially appeared to be random agitation now seemed focused and intentional. He had moved closer to the pride, closing the distance to roughly 150 meters. His trunk swayed menacingly as he tested the air, and his eyes remained fixed on the lions beneath the acacia tree. Sarah realized with growing alarm that this wasn't coincidental proximity. The elephant was actively stalking the vulnerable pride. Sarah reached for her satellite phone to call for backup, but the nearest ranger station was over an hour away. The helicopter, used for emergency wildlife rescues, was currently deployed on an anti-poaching operation in the northern sector and wouldn't be available for at least 3 hours. Radio calls to nearby ranger patrols yielded the same frustrating response. Everyone was either too far away or engaged in other critical operations. The injured lioness would be dead long before help arrived. Through her binoculars, Sarah watched in horror as the bull elephant began his charge. His massive form thundered across the savanna, trunk raised and ears spread wide in full attack mode. The 6 healthy lions immediately scattered, their survival instincts overriding their loyalty to their injured leader. The matriarch, unable to move due to her injuries, lay helpless as 3 tons of enraged elephant bore down on her position. Sarah's veterinary training had prepared her for many emergency scenarios, but nothing in her experience had equipped her for this moment. Every rational part of her mind screamed against intervention. Placing herself between a charging elephant and his target violated every safety protocol she had ever learned. Her vehicle, while sturdy, would provide minimal protection against an elephant's full force. A single strike from those massive tusks could crush the Land Rover's engine block, leaving her stranded and defenseless. But watching the injured lioness face certain death while Sarah remained safely distant was equally impossible. In 12 years of wildlife veterinary work, she had never abandoned a patient, regardless of the species or circumstances involved. Without conscious thought, Sarah's foot slammed down on the accelerator. Her Land Rover roared to life as she drove directly into the path of the charging elephant, positioning her vehicle between the massive bull and the helpless lioness. The elephant's charge faltered as confusion replaced rage. His ancient brain struggled to process this unexpected obstacle that had materialized from nowhere. Sarah leaned on her horn continuously while revving the engine to maximum volume. The cacophony of mechanical noise echoed across the savanna as she slowly advanced toward the elephant, maintaining steady eye contact through her windshield. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands remained steady on the wheel. This technique, known as vehicle intimidation, was a last resort method used by experienced guides to deter aggressive megafauna. The bull elephant reared back on his hind legs, trumpeting furiously at this mechanical intruder. His tusks gleamed in the afternoon sun as he swayed from side to side, trying to determine whether this strange, loud creature posed a genuine threat. Sarah continued her advance, maintaining constant noise while carefully gauging the elephant's body language. One wrong move, one sign that her bluff was failing, and she would need to retreat immediately. For 30 seconds that felt like hours, the standoff continued. The massive head swung back and forth as he tested the air with his trunk, trying to understand this bizarre confrontation. Sarah kept her vehicle moving slowly forward, never allowing the elephant to settle into a comfortable distance.
The continuous engine noise and mechanical smell seemed to confuse the animal's sensory assessment of the situation. Finally, the elephant's survival instincts overcame his aggressive impulses. With a final, ear-splitting trumpet of frustration, he turned away from the confrontation and began moving toward the river. His massive form disappeared gradually into the tall grass, though Sarah could still hear his occasional rumbles of displeasure echoing across the landscape. The immediate crisis had passed, but Sarah's work was far from over. The injured lioness remained critically wounded beneath the acacia tree, and the scattered pride members had not yet returned to their leader's side. Sarah now faced the equally dangerous task of providing medical treatment to a severely injured predator, while 6 other lions watched from the surrounding grassland. Her hands trembled slightly as adrenaline began to wear off, replaced by the sobering reality of what she had just attempted and what still lay ahead. Sarah parked her Land Rover 30 meters from the injured lioness and began preparing her medical equipment with practiced efficiency. The scattered pride members remained hidden in the tall grass, their golden forms occasionally visible as they moved restlessly through the vegetation. Sarah knew they were watching her every movement, torn between their instinct to protect their leader and their natural fear of humans. From her medical kit, Sarah extracted a tranquilizer dart loaded with a carefully calculated dose of metatominine and ketamine. The lioness weighed approximately 130 kilograms, and her weakened state required a reduced dosage to avoid respiratory complications. Sarah loaded the dart into her compressed air rifle, a tool she had used hundreds of times, but never under such intense scrutiny from multiple apex predators. The approach required absolute precision. Sarah moved slowly toward the injured lioness, speaking in low, calm tones while maintaining awareness of the surrounding area where the other pride members lurked. The matriarch's eyes tracked Sarah's movement, but exhaustion and blood loss had dulled her usual aggressive responses. Her breathing remained labored, and fresh blood continued to seep from the deep gash across her hindquarters. At 15 meters distance, Sarah raised the dart rifle and took careful aim at the lioness's shoulder muscle. The compressed air weapon made a soft whooshing sound as the dart found its target. The lioness flinched slightly, but lacked the energy for a more dramatic response. Sarah immediately retreated to her vehicle to wait for the sedative to take effect, knowing that the next few minutes would determine whether her intervention would succeed or fail catastrophically. As the medication began to work, something extraordinary happened. Instead of fleeing or becoming more agitated, the 6 pride members began emerging from their hiding places. They approached cautiously, forming a wide circle around Sarah and their sedated leader. Their behavior defied every principle of lion psychology that Sarah had studied. Wild lions typically avoided human contact at all costs, yet these animals seemed to understand that Sarah was trying to help their fallen matriarch. The largest male, a magnificent specimen with a thick, dark mane, positioned himself closest to Sarah. His amber eyes never left her face, but his body language suggested curiosity rather than aggression. The 2 adult females flanked him on either side, while the 4 younger lions maintained a respectful distance. Sarah realized she was witnessing something unprecedented. A wild lion pride allowing a human to provide medical care to their leader while they stood guard. With the lioness fully sedated, Sarah began her medical examination under the watchful eyes of the pride. The wound was more severe than initially apparent. 3 deep puncture marks, likely from another lion's claws, had torn through muscle and fascia down to the bone. The injury was several days old, evidenced by the early signs of infection around the wound edges. Without treatment, sepsis would have killed the lioness within 48 hours. Sarah worked methodically, cleaning the wound with antiseptic solution while the 6 lions maintained their protective circle. The male lion had positioned himself barely 10 meters away, close enough that Sarah could hear his steady breathing. Occasionally, one of the younger lions would emit a soft chuff, as if communicating with their sedated leader. Sarah had never experienced anything like this level of trust from wild predators.
The surgical repair required 47 stitches across 3 separate lacerations. Sarah administered antibiotics directly into the muscle tissue and provided a long-acting pain medication that would help the lioness through the initial healing phase. Throughout the procedure, which lasted nearly 2 hours, the pride never wavered in their vigilant protection. They seemed to understand that Sarah's actions were benefiting their matriarch. As Sarah packed her medical equipment, she administered the reversal agent to counteract the sedative. The lioness would regain consciousness gradually over the next 20 minutes. Sarah retreated to her vehicle and documented the encounter in her field notes, photographing the wound site and recording the precise medications administered. This case would require follow-up monitoring to ensure proper healing and prevent complications. When the matriarch finally lifted her head, the reunion was unlike anything Sarah had witnessed in her veterinary career. The 6 lions approached their leader with obvious relief, gently nuzzling her face and neck. The great male rubbed his massive head against her shoulder while the females groomed her ears. The younger lions pressed close, creating a living blanket of golden fur around their recovered leader. But then something even more extraordinary occurred. The matriarch, still groggy from the sedative but clearly aware of her surroundings, turned her head towards Sarah's vehicle. For several long moments, the lioness maintained eye contact with her human rescuer. Then, in a gesture that defied explanation, she dipped her head in what appeared to be acknowledgement before slowly rising to test her repaired leg. The pride watched this interaction with apparent understanding, as if they too recognized the debt that had been created. 3 months passed before Sarah encountered the acacia pride again. She had returned to the same territory for a routine vaccination program targeting the local buffalo herds when her radio crackled with an emergency call. "Dr. Mitchell, we have a situation at Leopard Rock," came the urgent voice of Ranger Kamani. "There's been a vehicle accident, and we need immediate medical assistance." Sarah's blood ran cold as she raced toward the coordinates. Leopard Rock was a notorious stretch of road where the terrain became treacherous during the rainy season. As she navigated the muddy track, her worst fears materialized before her eyes. A tourist safari vehicle had skidded off the narrow road and rolled down a steep embankment, coming to rest against a cluster of boulders 30 meters below. The overturned Land Cruiser lay on its side with 2 unconscious passengers trapped inside. Sarah could see movement from the driver, but the tourists remained motionless. Worse yet, the accident had occurred in the heart of predator territory. Fresh lion tracks crisscrossed the muddy ground around the crash site, and the scent of blood from the injured passengers would inevitably attract dangerous wildlife. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work, so if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Sarah rappelled down the embankment with her emergency medical kit, knowing that time was critically short. The driver had sustained a severe head injury, but was conscious and responsive. The 2 tourists, a middle-aged couple from Germany, showed signs of internal injuries and possible spinal trauma. Moving them without proper stabilization equipment could prove fatal, but leaving them in the overturned vehicle was equally dangerous. As Sarah worked to stabilize the most critically injured passenger, a low rumble echoed across the ravine. Her blood froze as she recognized the distinctive sound of approaching lions. Through the gathering dusk, 7 familiar silhouettes appeared along the ridge above the crash site. The acacia pride had arrived, drawn by the commotion and the scent of blood. Sarah's hands never paused in their work, but her mind raced through the implications.
The pride could easily descend into the ravine and attack the helpless victims. Lions were opportunistic predators, and injured humans represented easy prey. The driver beside her whimpered in terror as he spotted the predators gathering above them. The German tourists remained unconscious, unaware that their lives now hung in the balance between Sarah's medical skills and the hunting instincts of 7 powerful lions.
Younger lions spread out along the remaining vantage points, creating an impenetrable barrier between the crash site and any other predators that might approach. Sarah continued her medical work in stunned silence as she realized the lions' intention. They weren't hunting, they were guarding. Every few minutes, one of the pride members would emit a low warning growl that echoed across the ravine, clearly communicating to any nearby hyenas, leopards, or rival lion groups that this territory was occupied and defended. The message was unmistakable. Nothing would be allowed to harm the humans below while Sarah worked to save them. For 4 hours, as Sarah stabilized spinal injuries, treated severe lacerations, and maintained the consciousness of her patients, the Acacia Pride maintained their vigil. When a clan of spotted hyenas appeared from the eastern grasslands, drawn by the scent of blood, the lion's response was immediate and decisive. The great male and 2 females descended partway down the slope, their coordinated roars and aggressive posturing driving the scavengers away completely. When the rescue helicopter finally arrived with proper medical equipment and additional personnel, the lions remained at their posts until every human had been safely evacuated from the ravine. Only after the aircraft disappeared into the night sky did the pride finally abandon their protective positions. Sarah watched from the helicopter as the 7 magnificent cats melted back into the darkness, their duty apparently complete. The German tourists survived their injuries completely, making full recoveries after extensive treatment in Nairobi. The safari driver required reconstructive surgery but returned to work 6 months later. When investigators later reviewed the crash site, they found unmistakable evidence of the lion's prolonged presence: paw prints, scent markings, and territorial scratches on the surrounding trees. Yet there was no sign that the predators had ever attempted to approach the injured humans. Sarah's detailed report of the incident was initially met with skepticism from the international wildlife community, until corroborating testimony from the helicopter rescue team and photographic evidence confirmed every detail of her extraordinary account. Today, 5 years after that miraculous night at Leopard Rock, Sarah continues her veterinary work across the Maasai Mara with a fundamentally changed understanding of animal intelligence and memory. The Acacia Pride still roams their territory, now expanded to include 2 new cubs born to the younger females. The matriarch, now approaching the end of her natural lifespan, remains the undisputed leader of the group, her surgical scar serving as a permanent reminder of the bond forged between human and lion. The scientific community initially struggled to accept Sarah's documented account of the lion's protective behavior. Traditional animal psychology suggested that wild predators were incapable of complex emotional responses like gratitude or reciprocal altruism. However, subsequent research conducted by behavioral biologists from Oxford University has provided compelling evidence that large cats possess far more sophisticated cognitive abilities than previously understood. Dr. Helena Rodriguez, lead researcher on the Oxford study, spent 18 months observing the Acacia Pride's interactions with humans in their territory. Her findings, published in the Journal of Animal Cognition, documented 14 separate instances where the pride displayed protective behavior toward park rangers and researchers. In each case, the lion's actions directly prevented potential attacks from other predators, suggesting a deliberate pattern of reciprocal behavior rather than coincidental territorial defense. The story of Sarah and the Acacia Pride has fundamentally changed wildlife management protocols across East Africa. Conservation organizations now incorporate bond recognition training into their veterinary programs, teaching field workers to identify and document instances of positive human-animal relationships.
These protocols have led to more successful rehabilitation efforts and reduced human-wildlife conflict in protected areas. The German tourists whose lives were saved that night have become passionate advocates for African wildlife conservation. They established the Leopard Rock Foundation, which provides funding for mobile veterinary services across Kenya and Tanzania. Their annual visits to the Maasai Mara include respectful observation of the acacia pride from a safe distance, a pilgrimage to honor the lions who protected them during their most vulnerable moments.
Sarah's work has expanded beyond individual animal treatment to include research into interspecies emotional intelligence. Her upcoming book, Beyond Instinct, When Wild Animals Choose Compassion, documents dozens of similar cases where predators displayed behaviors that challenge our fundamental assumptions about animal consciousness and moral reasoning. When humans show compassion to the wild world, Sarah reflects, sometimes that compassion returns in ways we never imagined possible. Sarah's most recent encounter with the acacia pride occurred just 3 weeks ago, during what should have been a routine cattle vaccination near the territory border. As she worked with local Maasai herders, the familiar silhouettes of 7 lions appeared on a distant hill. The cattle became agitated, sensing the presence of predators nearby. But something unprecedented happened next. The matriarch, now graying around her muzzle but still commanding, led her pride in a wide arc around the vaccination site. Rather than approaching the vulnerable livestock, the lions positioned themselves between Sarah's work area and a pack of wild dogs that had been stalking the cattle herd. Once again, the acacia pride had chosen protection over predation. This latest incident has attracted attention from National Geographic, who are now documenting Sarah's ongoing relationship with the pride for an upcoming documentary. Camera crews have captured footage of the lion's unusual behavior, providing visual evidence of what many still consider impossible. But perhaps the most remarkable development came last month, when Sarah discovered lion tracks leading directly to her remote field station. Carved into the wooden post of her equipment shelter were fresh claw marks at exactly the height of an adult lioness. The matriarch had visited Sarah's camp alone, leaving what could only be described as a calling card before disappearing back into the wilderness. What started as a veterinary emergency has evolved into something that challenges everything we thought we knew about the relationship between humans and apex predators. Sarah's story proves that compassion, courage, and respect can transcend the boundaries between species, creating bonds that defy millions of years of evolutionary programming. Have you ever witnessed an animal behavior that completely surprised you? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this incredible story of interspecies loyalty inspired you, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss our most amazing wildlife stories. Like this video if you believe that sometimes the wildest creatures can teach us the most about what it truly means to be grateful.